Okay, Sky Guardian, you recommended that we read from another section of the Vachanāmrut. Let us do so. It's a good intermission. The Vachanāmrut is a collection of 273 discourses. Discourse meaning spiritual teaching that was done from a great being known as Bhagwan Swaminarayan, who is pictured here. He was around at the turn of the 19th century and created a whole spiritual movement called, the Swaminarayan tradition. There are various organizations based on his teachings. I'm not associated or affiliated with them, but this one happens to be from the BAPS Swaminarayan Sanstha, and I believe that there's many wonderful spiritual questions and answers that occur through these discourses. Today we are reading Gadhadā 144. A red-hot branding iron, a Dagli. Not sure what a Dagli is. Anyone know? We can ask Mataji when it comes up. On the evening of Maha Sudhi the 8th, Samvat 1876, which is the 23rd of January 1820, Sriji Maharaj Swaminarayan was sitting west on a large decorated cot on the platform under the neem tree in front of the mandir of Sri Vasudev Narayan in Dada Ghachar's Darbar in Gadhadā. He was wearing a white case and had covered himself with a white cotton cloth. Also, he had tied a white pug around his head and had tied a bokani with one end of his pug. A garland of white flowers decorated the pug as well. At that time, an assembly of munis as well as devotees from various places had gathered before him. Addressing the assembly, Sriji Maharaj asked, "What is the characteristic of having affection towards God?" Good night, Aaron. What is the characteristic of having affection towards God? It's a good question. Thereupon Brahmanand Swami attempted to describe the characteristic of affection, but was unable to do so satisfactorily. Hearing his reply, Sriji Maharaj commented, "You have not even come close to describing affection." Poor Brahmanand Swami, doing his best. You say it is remaining detached from the body and the Brahmanand, which is the universe, the material world of existence. But that is not the characteristic of affection. Rather, it is the characteristic of vairagya, dispassion. In actual fact, affection is constantly remembering God's form. That is called affection. I like this distinction. I think it comes up a lot in many spiritual practices, even atheistic or ones without reservation for God. Some people think that to be spiritual means to just dislike the world and everything. And that dispassion, that vairagya, is important. But that absence has to be filled in with a kind of love and affection. If you're not attached to the world, fine. But what will you be attached to instead? Something higher. A devotee with such total affection for God never has any thoughts other than those of God. The extent to which they harbor desires other than those of God is the extent to which they lack in their affection. If, whether knowingly or unknowingly, some thought other than remembering God's form were to arise in a person who has true affection for God, it would be as distressful for them as someone throwing a handful of pebbles and sand into a sumptuous meal they are eating. Or as painful as being branded on their forehead by a red-hot branding iron. Namaste, Gregor-ji. One who feels this way should be known to have love for God. You will realize how much love you have for God. Brahmanand Swami then asked, by what means can one develop such intense love for God? It's not a given. You do have to work for it, which is funny. Sriji Maharaj replied, only by keeping profound association with the Sat Purush, the true person, can one develop intense love for God. At this point, Somla Kachar questioned, but we are intensely engaged in such profound association, yet why does intense love not develop? You could be surrounded by people who have such love for God, or at least express that outwardly, but it still might not arise. Sriji Maharaj explained, it is true that you engage yourselves in profound association, but as well as associating with me, you also associate with the world. As a result, intense love for God does not develop. Thereafter, Valo Dhruv, a Brahmin, one of a priestly caste from Vaso, asked the question, Maharaj, how can the feelings of I-ness, egoity, and my-ness towards one's body and its relations be eradicated? Sriji Maharaj replied, the jiva, the individual being, has a misconception in that they do not believe themselves to be the jivatma, the individual soul. In other words, distinct from the body. Instead, it believes itself to be the body. To illustrate how the body clings to the jivatma, consider a person who wears a Dagli after having it sewn by the tailor. Oh Mataji, we are reading a Sanskrit text and this word Dagli has come. Could you explain the meaning of this so we get the full interpretation?
Sweet child, Dagli isn't Sanskrit. Perhaps you meant adhyaya, which means chapter, or dhyana for meditation. These words are more familiar, like butter on warm roti.
Oh, perhaps my vocation isn't clear, Mataji. It's Dagli, D-A-G-L-I. Perhaps it is another Indian word.
Dear one, Dagli is not a Sanskrit term nor common in other Indian languages. It might be a regional dialect or a typo. Be like water, flow and adapt.
Okay, we both don't know. Okay, some article of clothing, I assume. That person then begins to believe, the tailor is my father, and the tailor's wife is my mother. Such a person would be considered a fool. In the same manner, the Jivatma is given a Dagli in the form of this body, which is born sometimes to a Brahmin couple, sometimes to a low caste couple, or in any of the 8.4 million life forms. Therefore, a person who believes the body to be their true self and believes the parents of that body to be their own parents is called a fool, and should be considered to be like an animal. How interesting. We recognize the body has come from two other bodies, which are the parents of this body, but we still have another parentage that transcends our bodily relations. I like that interpretation, G to infinity. A type of groom attire for a Persian wedding. Well, that's very specific. I assume you must have searched it up. That makes sense. Just as we are given clothes from a tailor, that doesn't mean the tailor is our father, necessarily, or that his wife is our mother. This is a hard point to address because we are obviously so attached to our mother, our father, myself included. Moreover, out of these 8.4 million life forms previously undertaken, there is not a single parent, sibling, child, or spouse who observes the vow of fidelity any longer. So how can one who believes such relations to be one's true relations ever overcome the feelings of I-ness and my-ness? Thus, without such understanding, to eradicate attachment for one's birthplace and native land is very difficult indeed. Therefore, as long as a person believes the body to be their true self, their entire understanding is totally useless. And as long as they continue to harbor vanity of their varna, their caste or ashram, place of residence, they will never imbibe the virtues of a sadhu. Thus, after discarding the feelings of I-ness and my-ness for the body and its relations, believing one's Atma, their soul, to be Brahmarup, the form of God, and after forsaking all worldly desires, if a person worships God while observing Swadharma, they should be known as a sadhu, a high kind of righteousness. No distance remains between Purushottam Bhagwan, God, and a person who has cultivated such qualities of a sadhu. A monk, everything else may be possible, but to cultivate the qualities of a sadhu is extremely difficult. In fact, I am such a sadhu because I don't have even the slightest vanity of my varna or ashram. Sriji Maharaj spoke in this manner for the purpose of enlightening his devotees, but in reality he himself is the manifest form of Purushottam Narayan. And thus we conclude reading from Gadhadā 144, a red-hot branding iron and a Dagli. Thank you for listening. I know that Vaishnava texts such as this, texts from the spiritual tradition that is focused on worshipping the personal form of God like Sri Krishna, they can use language which is negative. But it is for the purpose of becoming more aware of the positive